In the ancient kingdom of Cedi, where dusty streets wound through bustling markets and humble homes, two traveling merchants arrived at the edge of town. They were both men of trade, selling pots, pans, trinkets, and small ornaments. Yet though they shared the same work, they were worlds apart in heart. One was clever and calculating, always seeking an advantage. The other was sincere and gentle, believing that honesty was the best way to live. To avoid conflict, they agreed to a simple rule. Each would cover different parts of the town first, and afterward, the other could return to try his fortune there. That morning, the first merchant, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, began his rounds. As he wandered down a quiet street lined with modest houses, a little girl spotted him from the doorway of her crumbling home. "Grandmother," she said, tugging at the old woman's sleeve, "can we buy a bracelet? Just a small one?" The grandmother sighed, brushing back the girl's hair. "My dear, we are poor. We have no money for such luxuries." "But we have that old black plate," the child insisted, eyes bright with hope. After a moment's hesitation, the grandmother called the merchant inside. She showed him a soot-covered plate, dull and lifeless to the untrained eye. "Would you accept this plate in exchange for a bracelet for my granddaughter?" she asked humbly. The merchant, lifting the plate, scratched its underside. His heart raced when he glimpsed the glint of gold beneath the grime. But he masked his excitement with a sneer. "This," he scoffed, "this is worthless. Not even worth one of my cheapest trinkets." Crushing their hope, he turned on his heel and left, murmuring to himself, "I'll come back later. By then they'll give it to me for nothing." Little did he know, the path of greed he had chosen would lead him somewhere he had never expected. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped lower behind the red-tiled roofs, the second merchant made his way down the same narrow street. His steps were calm, his smile warm, and his eyes full of kindness. The little girl, still hopeful despite the earlier disappointment, spotted him and tugged at her grandmother's hand once again. "Grandmother," she whispered, "this man looks different. Maybe he will help us." The old woman, touched by the child's persistence, nodded gently. They invited the merchant into their humble home. Inside, the air smelled of worn fabric and faded memories. The grandmother brought out the same old plate, her hands trembling slightly. "This is all we have," she said softly. "Would you accept it for a simple bracelet?" The merchant took the plate carefully, examining it not with greed, but with genuine curiosity. As he rubbed a corner, the gleam of pure gold revealed itself beneath layers of soot and age. He gasped softly, not out of greed, but out of respect for what this meant. "My dear lady," he said with deep sincerity, "this plate is not worthless. It is pure gold, far more valuable than anything I carry." The old woman blinked, disbelief and confusion clouding her eyes. "But the other merchant said it was worth nothing." The merchant shook his head firmly. "He lied to you." He looked around at his modest collection of goods, pots, pans, simple trinkets, and the few coins he had earned. "I will give you everything I have, every pot, every trinket, and every coin, if you will allow me to take this plate. I ask only to keep 8 small coins to weigh it properly on my scale." Tears welled up in the grandmother's eyes, not from the gold, not from the goods, but from the sheer honesty she felt radiating from this man. "May blessings follow you always," she whispered. The trade was made. The merchant carefully wrapped the golden plate, bowed respectfully to the woman and the little girl, and set off towards the river to return home. As he walked away, his heart was light, not because of the fortune he had found, but because he had done right by those who had so little. He knew true wealth was not in what he carried, but in the way he had chosen to carry himself. Just as the honest merchant's boat began to drift slowly across the shimmering river, a commotion stirred back at the poor woman's house. The greedy merchant had returned. His eyes gleamed with anticipation, already calculating in his mind how he would sell the golden plate for a fortune and live out his days in luxury. But as he stepped through the doorway, expecting to find the blackened plate waiting for him, the little girl and her grandmother greeted him with serene smiles. "We no longer have the plate," the grandmother said calmly. The merchant's grin froze. "What do you mean?" "A kind merchant came after you," she explained, "and he told us the truth. He gave us everything he had in exchange for it." The greedy merchant's face turned ashen. "What? Everything for that filthy plate?" He spat, his voice rising with panic. But inside, he knew. He had been outsmarted not by cunning, but by honesty. The old woman continued, her voice steady. "He said the plate was pure gold. He did not lie like you did. He gave freely without trickery." Rage boiled in the greedy merchant's veins. Without a word, he threw down his bundles of goods and bolted toward the riverbank, pushing past startled villagers. From the river's edge, he spotted the ferry slowly making its way across the wide waters, carrying the honest merchant and the precious plate farther from his grasp with each passing second. Frenzied, he screamed across the water, "Come back! You cheated me! That plate should have been mine!" But the honest merchant, sitting calmly aboard the boat, simply smiled. He spoke softly to the boatman, "Do not stop, keep rowing." The ferry glided on, untouched by the greedy man's cries. Seeing his last hope slip away, the greedy merchant pounded his fists against his chest, cursed the heavens, and wept uncontrollably. His greed, once so powerful, now consumed him entirely. Unable to bear the weight of his own bitterness and loss, the merchant collapsed onto the dusty ground. His rage twisted into despair, and his despair into final, fatal defeat. On that lonely riverbank, under the indifferent gaze of the setting sun, the greedy merchant's story ended, not with triumph, but with tragedy. He had lost everything, not because he had too little, but because he had wanted too much. The ferry drifted steadily toward the opposite bank, the honest merchant sitting in quiet reflection. Behind him, the cries of the greedy man faded into the distance, swallowed by the endless rustling of the river wind. As the boat touched the shore, villagers gathered, curious to see the merchant who had traded away all he owned for what many assumed was a worthless item. But when he unwrapped the plate and the pure gold beneath the grime gleamed in the afternoon sun, awe and admiration rippled through the crowd. Some gasped. Others whispered among themselves, "Surely only a man of great virtue could be so blessed." Yet the honest merchant simply bowed his head humbly. He knew this fortune was not his alone to hoard. He used part of the gold to rebuild his modest home. But most of it he invested into the village, repairing old roads, restoring the broken school, helping the poor farmers with seeds and tools. His generosity multiplied his blessings, and soon prosperity returned to the whole village. As years passed, the story of the two merchants, the honest and the greedy, became a lesson shared from parent to child, teacher to student. It was not the gold that made the man wealthy. It was his honesty, his selflessness, his willingness to tell the truth when it would have been easy to deceive. The greedy merchant had died clutching at shadows, while the honest one lived surrounded by real wealth, the respect, love, and gratitude of everyone he had touched. And when travelers came to Cedi and asked about the village's secret to happiness, the elders would smile and say, "Here, we learned long ago that true riches come not from gold, but from the goodness we carry in our hearts." Moral of the story: honesty is not just a virtue, It is a silent power that shapes destinies. Wealth built on lies crumbles. Wealth built on truth endures. Remember, life will often tempt us with easy shortcuts. But real greatness lies in choosing the right path. Even when no one is watching, stay honest, stay humble, and trust that goodness will lead you to treasures beyond your imagination.